Welcome to Sunday Morning. I'm Dennis Woltering. In the first 6 weeks of this year, drug overdoses killed 3 young people in the metro area, including a 16-year-old girl. Then this past week, federal authorities announced 2 arrests taking out what they describe as a drug ring preying on young people. And they warn parents across the area to be on alert for drug use by their children. We're devoting this entire program to this issue today. Later, U.S. Attorney Jim Letton will talk to us about the threat from these dangerous drugs, and we'll hear from school officials to see how they're responding to this challenge of kids on drugs. But first, we have 2 parents who are speaking out in an effort to alert other families to the danger of these drugs and to look for solutions. Joining us now, Zinat Rashid, the mother of an 18-year-old who has had more than 1 heroin overdose that almost killed him, and the father of 19-year-old Pierce Sherry, who died of a heroin overdose, John Sherry Sr. Thank you both for coming in. And John, let's talk about your son first. I mean, tell us about your son. He was 19 years old.
19 years old. He was an honor student at LSU in biochemistry. He thought he knew he wanted to be a neurosurgeon. He did very well in school. His grades were exemplary. In fact, when he finished up his first semester, he had a total of 37 credits before he was finished with the first semester. He had that much. So he picked up that in high school before he got there. High ambitions. High ambitions.
I know you're limited in what you can tell us in certain aspects of the story, but what can you tell us about what happened to your son? He was at the Marriott Hotel, I know that.
He was at the Marriott and somehow and having a party, and somehow he ended up dead. He ended up dead, and
he was in trouble. He knew he was in trouble. He was texting other kids asking for help.
I don't have any of the information from the report, so I can't tell you that.
But did you have any sense that he was using heroin?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He was one of the kids that, you know, he drank. I know he drank, and I know that in the colleges this is something that goes on. He drank. And
well, let's face it, it goes on at the high schools.
At the high schools, everywhere it goes.
And he went to Ben Franklin before he, is that correct?
Yes, he went to Ben Franklin there, and I don't think it's any secret that those kids were all extremely close-knit. As to when her niece came on to the original report and said that they were destroyed. All these kids were destroyed about it. They were very close-knit.
So when you found out that heroin was involved in this, you had to be...
Well, actually, I don't know if, I mean, as far as with Pierce is concerned, we have no official report yet. We do not know what killed him exactly. So it's not anywhere. I can't even answer that. But he, you know, obviously something of a chemical nature did kill him because it took him out right away. And you feel the need to speak out about this? Definitely so. Tell me why. Definitely so. Because you know, New Orleans' atmosphere has always been, and I mean, I was born and raised in New Orleans. The parents are a big problem in it, because down here, drinking, partying, Mardi Gras, the whole New Orleans attitude is to be permissive. Too often enable these kids to take part in drugs and things. You know, if the kids want to have a party, or if they hear about them drinking, well, oh, stay here. We'll give you the keg of beer, and we'll drink with you. You know, and it sets that up to where the kids don't know that no, it's not all right to drink. It's not all right to go out there and do that. It's, you know, and when you hit 21, then you're maybe able to make those decisions. They don't do that. They allow them to go with it. And parents try to be friends rather than parents. And you just can't do it. Zina, tell us a little bit about your son. Your son you had a horrible scare when he collapsed.
Yes, I had no idea that my son was on anything dangerous at all. And so I fell from the skies. So immediately we sought counseling, and Dennis, it wasn't that that counseling wasn't available. It was just very difficult for me to know where to go, because there were rehab programs that were available, outpatient programs, so that he could continue to go to school. But these were for 18 or 17 and above, or 18, I think 18 and above, whatever it was. He wasn't
old enough. Right.
And then
he's 18 now, but he wasn't then.
And then the program that was available, that was for an in-house that was run by the state, that they didn't have beds, even if he was willing to go. But if he was not willing to go, we still had discretionary thing to force him to go, but there was no rooms available. And so that, you know, when you said that treatment was difficult to find, unless you have insurance, which is not state insurance, the La CHIP, it's very limited, difficult. Very limited.
We also interviewed for the special report we did, in which you were a part of this special report. We interviewed Mary Prevost, who's the mother of Maddie Prevost, the 16-year-old girl who died January 6th. She was the first of these 3 deaths that we've been talking about. And she talked about how the impact of Hurricane Katrina may be affecting these children. Here's what she had to say about that.
I do feel that children who were impacted by the storm have a sense of what does it matter and what else do I have to lose. And I do think there's a layer of recklessness that may not be present in other communities because of the sense that they have experienced something that no other body of teenagers has really experienced. And teenagers traditionally do not want to be depressed. They do not want to feel bad. They want to feel good and happy. They do not want to process Katrina. They don't want to talk about it. They're sick of the K word. But I do think that there's a sense of recklessness that may have come into play as we see more and more deaths and drug use in our community.
And Zina, you have some special concerns about how parents are able to deal with young people. Tell us about your questions and concerns.
I just want to address something that Mary said, and I agree totally about teenagers feeling reckless. But I think with Katrina, it's not a question of recklessness, it's a question of, see, even that didn't hurt us. We're going about, everybody says New Orleans is back to normal, we're going about life is back to normal.
That idea, that's something that kids have in general.
Exactly.
That there's no concern about mortality.
Exactly. And so that's something, and then kids don't want to process pain.
Right.
But as a society, my concern is that we as the adults in the society are not giving our kids the right messages. Just as John here talked about the permissiveness of that having a good time includes having a one too many. I mean, having a glass of wine is fine. But it seems that New Orleans getting high means having a good time.
But look, we're talking about kids who are underage here,
and well,
drinking and using drugs.
Unfortunately, it's with children that, like I said, when they're experimenting with marijuana or with alcohol, and they're that young, okay, and nobody knows. When Maddie died, I'm sure there were counselors available at Lusher, at the school. Which of her friends would go to the counselor and say, yes, I also do this?
You're talking about the need to get kids engaged in this prevention. And how do you feel about that, Mr. Sherry?
I think every little bit helps. I don't think every little helps. There is not out there the culture that we have in New Orleans, which is the bars, the college bars, all those bars. You look at that kind of culture, and kids are sneaking into it. They're getting into it one way or another.
What has to happen in your mind? I mean, is it parents, is it families, is it schools, is it the community at large? What has to change?
I think it's a combination of all of it. I think it's all of it. Law enforcement has to hammer down just a little bit more when it comes to the clubs where the kids are getting drinks and things like that. I mean, the law enforcement in this area does an excellent job to do what they do with the resources that they have. But there's some of the places that they really should consider being a little bit bigger on. It's not the Kenny Vincent's places and the big places that got all the bright lights that attracts everybody. It's the smaller places where the kids can sneak in, where nobody's really going to worry about that.
You talked about permissiveness. At the news conference announcing the arrest of these two guys in the Maddie Prevost case, Sheriff Newell Norman was saying that parents should snoop on their kids. How do you feel about that?
I think it's an absolute. I think it's an absolute. I said, if you care about your kids, snoop on them. They may get mad at you, but
you know, this is.
Should you look at their email and check their text messaging and that sort of thing?
This is what I think. It has to start from a very young age, where you teach your children openness. And if you don't teach your children openness, and you're not willing to have your life open to your kids, then your kids have a right to turn around and say, no, my life is not open to you either. And so as a society, there's certain things that we just have to change. And yes, I do think that kids and parents have a right to ask each other disturbing questions, embarrassing questions. And
almost an obligation to do that. That's a responsibility of a parent.
Absolutely.
Right.
And parents, I think, when you're not comfortable about not getting answers, you should be able to have a school that's available, a social service, a law enforcement, a juvenile, whatever. Those resources should be available to you so that you can go and say, you know, I'm a little uncomfortable. My kid isn't being very open. Her grades are fine. His grades are fine. But you know what's going on. And if our system was an open system where it wouldn't be a big deal if a kid was called up and said, hey, what's going on? Who are your friends? What you all doing?
It might work better.
I think an openness. And as far as the other thing is, I think that parents, if we are willing to give up privacy rights to the law, to the school, to in order to teach our children that, you know what, your kids, your life has got to be open. Sorry. There is no privacy right now.